once again, ladies and gentlemen, to Junk Dilemmas and Irvine Welsh podcast. I am, as always, one of your hosts, Mr. Damien Kiley, and I'm joined, as always, with the laughing man. Tell them your name.
Why don't you introduce me?
Yeah, it's James Laughing King once again with me here.
Sorry, apologies. Very unprofessional.
I thought we were past all that, but apparently not. But sure, no matter. Disclaimer. I think we haven't done the disclaimer the last couple of times, so I'm going to say quickly. We don't know Irvine Welsh. We're not Fred's is.
I know his cousin Dickie Welsh.
Dickie Belly.
Glenn Welsh as well.
Anyway, don't sue us and don't sue him, because anything we say, he's not responsible for and all that. And there will be rude words and whatnot, but you know that by now. Other than that, some quick Welsh news, James. Welsh news.
Newport Gwent Dragons 15, Cardiff 4.
Not sports news,
sorry.
Welsh news. So I've been hearing in the last week that there's apparently possibly going to be a Begbie TV series.
Oh, I've seen that, yeah.
Yeah, a nice little spin-off based on the book The Blade Artist, apparently. So apparently this is coming from Robert Carlyle himself. He's been talking to Mr. Welch, and they've been in touch with some exciting London-based directors. So hopefully that'll happen. That'd be brilliant. I mean, it's a great book, and I think Welsh books are best suited to TV shows, actually, because it gives more room to spread and whatnot.
He's a bit old now, Robert Carlyle.
Yeah, but the Blade Artist is set, I guess roughly 20 years after Trainspotting anyway, right. And it would make more sense because there's a big character change, let's put it to you that way. So it would make sense for him to be a bit older and wiser, some might say.
I doubt it.
A little bit more mature around the chops. But let's hope it happens. I mean, something along the lines of, Shane Meadows type stuff, This Is England, that sort of thing, base it over a few episodes could be really good. So stay tuned.
We certainly will.
Perhaps we'll be talking about that in a few years' time.
Did you like that This Is England joke?
I did like This Is England, yes.
Yeah. It was alright.
All of them.
Didn't see that. I only seen the first one.
Which was just called This Is England,
yes.
The film. Yeah, so you didn't see any of the TV shows?
One of them was a TV. The one where all the skinheads.
Yeah, that's a film.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, but then they did like
Channel
4 series based over different moments in time. Yeah,
I've seen a few bits. I didn't. It was alright.
No, I thought they were quite good. Anyway, we're not here to talk about This Is England.
Alright. Well, which is good because I know fuck all about it.
And I don't remember fucking anything about it hardly either. The other thing I want to mention quickly, I mentioned it before on my solo Trainspotting episodes, coming up to a year ago now. So there's a large format book based on Trainspotting, been in development for really the last year. A series collector's item, and I believe it's just about to be released. I think they're taking pre-orders on it now, and it just looks really good. It's by a guy called Jay Glennie. He's with Coattail Publications, and it looks like a savage book. I'll hopefully get hinting on that on my Christmas list post haste, but there's only 1,000 of them being made, so worth a few quid in time, but be a serious coffee table book for discussion with your aunties over Christmas. No, it sounds really cool, doesn't it, Jem?
Yes, yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with this. So
look out for that one. But anyway, on to the subject of the day. We are going to be discussing Irvine Welsh's 4th novel, which was entitled Glue. In terms of a backstory, I couldn't find much online, I'll be honest.
I wouldn't imagine so.
There doesn't seem to be much about, there's lots of interviews and whatnot, but in terms of what gave him the idea, I mean, we kind of know what gave him the idea. Living in Edinburgh probably gave him the idea.
His life.
Indeed. But there is a short synopsis that I've seen online, which I might read here, which gives us a bit of an overall view of it. So yeah, Glue was the 4th novel by Irvine Welsh, published in 2001. I think it was published in April 2001, so we're a little over 20 years anniversary here. It's concerning friendship, drugs, sex, and getting by in a working class neighbourhood in Edinburgh. It charts the development and camaraderie of 4 ragtag lads at the beginning of 4 consecutive decades. 1970s through to the turn of the millennium. They are Billy Beryl, honourable but easily provoked street-smart champion boxer, Terry Juice Lawson, easygoing, sex-crazed layabout, Andrew Galloway, troubled heroin addict who's estranged from his family, and Carl Ensign Ewart, chemical DJ prodigy who supports Hearts, much to the dislike of his three hippie mates. We follow them through childhood upheavals, small-town theft, casual battles with Scotland's teams, drug experimentation, holidays to Europe, struggles with the local scheme gangsters, and the all-important pursuit of women so as to get their hole and perhaps more besides. What's the more besides, I wonder? Other holes?
A few holes, I suppose, yeah.
The long-reaching consequences of their actions and the permanent, devastating effects they have are explored from the outset. So there you have it. Yeah, this is a popular book. I mean, from both people I know and people I've read online that are fans of Welsh, even just passing fans, they seem to mention this book a fair bit. Seems to be a popular one, after the obvious Trainspotting. Although another popular one that I've heard a lot of people mention is Marabou's Dark Nightmare. So take from that what you will, but
people are skull.
Not all people.
No,
just like to clarify. I did find just a small snippet of an interview as well from the man himself on this. This is from salon.com, which I don't know if it's a hairdressing based website, but they're talking to Irvine Welsh about his book Glue anyway, so I just thought I'd mention this. I didn't really have a plot for this one. I just thought, well, I did want to get back to the feel of Trainspotting. The idea that you've got these characters that are sort of sparking off each other and they generate the story from there. Yeah, that sounds about right. What am I looking at?
Salon.com.
Oh, right. Jeez, you got that up very quick. Still in existence. The power of the internet, huh?
Yes.
So yeah, Welsh said he didn't have the idea of a plot to begin with, but he had characters in mind. He actually did not write the story in chronological order either, which kind of makes sense as well, which is very similar to the style of writing for Trainspotting itself. He says he first wrote Windows 90, which is kind of the middle part, I believe, and the following parts after, and then decided to talk about the parents of the main protagonist as well, which I think is a good place to start, in fairness. Yeah, so the style of book is very much like Trainspotting, would you say?
It is. It's a bit more easy. It's very easy to read.
I suppose it doesn't concentrate on the backdrop of drug abuse overall.
No.
It's just, as we said, life in Edinburgh. But obviously it's very similar in that it concentrates on a group of lads who all kind of are different to each other as time goes by.
They're deteriorating relationships, shall we say.
Yes, indeed. The cover, quickly. So this is the one that I read at the time, 20 years ago, still have it. It's got an egg on the front. It's got a bit of a crack in it. I don't know.
Cracks.
Is this based just on the fact that, as a unit of friends, they can be strong, but as soon as there's a problem, you get a crack and then yolk everywhere. And nobody wants that. Egg on their face and on their cheeks and dribbling down their lips. I don't know where that came from.
But that's exactly what I was thinking too.
But just, the book's called Glue, but it's got an egg on the front. There is a later copy that has a tube of glue on it.
What is it?
But I mean, I suppose glue being in there.
There was no glue sniffing in it.
No.
Which was disappointing.
I guess glue is I did think that when I first read it, that there would be.
I was hoping it'd be.
Yeah. But no, I suppose it's just, for metaphorical purposes.
He likes eggs.
He likes eggs and he likes glue. He likes the bond, the sticky bond of four guys together. That sounds bad, but
sounds very bad.
Yeah, so it's about the glue of friendship, I guess, is the overall theme of the book. But yeah, that's kind of as much of a backstory as we can put together here. Do you want to get into the breakdown?
I certainly do.
Okay, let's do it. So yeah, we start off in 1970s, and as it says, we get a small bit of a backstory with the four main characters' parents, really. We get Andrew Galloway's family moving into their new house in Leith, and the mother is wondering where the dad has gotten the money for all the new furniture. So a bit suspect there, and I think he gets lifted out by the cops pretty sharply.
Regularly.
Yeah.
Throughout.
And speaking of dads, absent fathers, Terry Lawson's dad, on the first day of Terry starting school, he just cheerily says goodbye to his family, his wife and kids, and just heads off. Insults some old dears at a table in the pub on his way out. And straight away, you kind of go, oh, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree here, I guess. Who else we got? We've Duncan Ewart, who's Carl's dad. So he seems pretty by the book. He's just shop steward, a metal worker in a factory. A keen music fan himself.
He is.
Big into Elvis. I think on the day that they speak about him here in the book, he's just after buying Elvis's latest single, The Wonder of You.
Oh, yes.
Not a bad song in fairness, but he's kind of comparing that to his dear old wife, who on occasion has had to excuse him for kind of 2 and 3 day benders. It seems to be part of the course. But I couldn't figure out who this man supports. He's gone on about Rangers at one stage. Is he one of these people that kind of has a couple of teams on the go?
I can't remember.
He mentions Rangers winning the league and he went on a bender for that.
I don't think he's supporting. No, I think he's supporting Kilmarnock.
Yeah, he's into Kilmarnock, as he mentions as well. And
but he would have liked Rangers.
Yeah, he's just one of these chaps who, doesn't tie his flag to one particular mast.
Many masts.
Say. But he sticks up for Billy's father, Willie Burrell, when he wants to get off work and go to his wife in hospital, who's having a baby in hospital. But I suppose that probably wasn't a valid excuse for getting off work in the 1970s.
Definitely not.
It was barely an excuse in the fucking early 2000s.
Okay, now.
But we see them meeting up afterwards then in Willie's house. Willie goes to Duncan's house to have a few beers, and they're just kind of speaking about their children. Obviously, Billy's young, Carl is slightly younger as well. And they're just kind of reminiscing on their own upbringing and the fact that they're in these new houses. So there's a lot of references to different areas in Leith, slightly more upmarket flats to other ones. But I suppose, once again, we're not from Leith, so we don't really know what they're talking about here.
Were you ever in Edinburgh?
No,
I
wasn't. And I wouldn't mind, my sister lived there for a while and I didn't go over and visit her. And I could have gone to all the sites.
I went to a dodgy pub, or
just one.
Well, this one was particularly dodgy, yeah. Fucking hell.
But so this is pretty short chapters at the start here, but you do get to see the effect that these different, I suppose, fathers more than the mothers have on their sons' lives. So it sets it up nicely in that regard. We get into the early 80s then, I believe, and we join the man himself, Juice Terry Lawson. He's 16, working on the juice.
What is the story with the juice like?
So this was obviously a thing. I mean,
all he sold was minerals. Driving around the truck selling Coke and Fanta.
It must have been.
Jesus. I kept going on about it. I said, what the fucking story is this?
Well, it was his dream job and he seems to be very upset when he lost it. But
well, he never worked since.
No, not in a proper job. No. And he's going on about it 20 years later. That my real profession is I worked in juice. But and it's pretty good in fairness. And obviously the name completely sticks. I mean, you know yourself, nicknames just stick out from an early age and that's the end of it.
Skids Martin.
Indeed. But he's not worried about the poor financial rewards of this job. Because
gets plenty of fanny.
That's it. His main focus is having sex with as many girls as possible and then getting to brag about it to his friends. And this is one of the big things in the book, the kind of one-upmanship, the bragging rights of becoming a man, whether it be getting your hole or beating somebody up or, just progressing further than your mates and then rubbing it in their face. And he obviously gets to do that more than others. I think it really becomes evident later in the book as well.
Oh, it drives them fucking mad.
It drives them mad. They can't figure out how he does it. And listening to the descriptions of this man over the pages, he's can't really figure it out yourself. Man. He seems to rely more on assertiveness and the gift of the gab than actual physical looks.
And the smell of iron brew off him as well.
Yeah, I don't think he's reached Bruce Robertson degrees of filth in terms of hygiene, but I mean, he mentions himself at one stage that a man should smell like a man, and there's too many puffs, inverted commas, going around spraying themselves like a tart's handbag. Actually, later in the book, there was a funny bit where he comes to the realisation that he's surrounded by metrosexuals. and that he might even have to start bringing his game up a bit because he's getting on in years, and the ladies aren't flocking around as much as they did. But back in the early 80s, he seemed to have this pick of them. And when we meet him here first, he's chatting up two girls, Gail and Maggie, and he talks his way back to their house.
Yeah.
Basically, almost talks his way into a threesome with them, but they kind of back out. He certainly gets to have sex with both of them on an individual basis.
Yes.
Which he's happy enough with. There's lots of exploration of different holes and whatnot. He mentions the musty smell of someone's rectum at one stage. Hopefully not his own.
Well, fair play to him because he reached down there.
But the big thing I found out of this section was that he's actually he's in this girl Maggie's house, but her uncle is staying there as well, who is Post Alec Connolly.
Yes, yeah.
He was a legendary character. Post Alec was mentioned briefly in Filth, if you remember. He was involved with Bruce. He robbed something for him to do with that politician who was caught then. And they ended up fucking. He did.
Conrad fucking.
No, not Conrad was the.
Oh, the politician.
The politician did something to the madame in the brothel.
Yes.
And he ended up leaving him fucking dressed as a tart in the middle of a fucking public street. But Post Alec robbed something from either a government building or I can't remember what it was. But anyway, he's been mentioned before. He's mentioned after this. He's definitely in Juice Terry's spin-off book, A Decent Ride. I think he might be in. Is he mentioned in Porno? Anyway, he's quite a character. He's a serious alcoholic. This man.
He's fond of a jar, alright. That's for sure. Fucking hell.
I think I have it in favourite writing, or at least descriptive writing. There's some pretty good descriptions of the state of squalor that he's living in when they get to his house.
He's been fairly rough. He's been a fairly rough. I think only 2 or 3 times he's in good form when he's absolutely scuttered. But other than that, he seems to be just hungover all the time.
Hungover and barely coherent as well. But I just like the fact that Terry's only 16 here, but kind of not latches onto him, but just finds a kindred spirit almost, and just somewhere to go for a few jars with, really, and somewhere to go back to his house. And obviously, as the book progresses, they're involved in some
shenanigans,
some burglary. Yeah, there's a brilliant bit coming up with them. Billy is mentioned briefly then in this first kind of section as well. He's actually, I think he's going out with Terry's sister at the start, much to Terry's chagrin. But he's definitely the most serious of these lads. He concentrates on his sports. He's
a good footballer. Yeah, he had trials, didn't he, with Hibs?
Yeah, he seems to be a good footballer. And then obviously, as the book progresses, he concentrates more on the boxing. And we know that Irvine Welsh himself is big into boxing. So that's probably why he made one of these characters a boxer. But dare I say, is he the most boring of the 4 characters?
He's completely the most boring of the 4 characters. Although I didn't like Ewart either, he was it.
Yeah, I suppose, what we're left with there is obviously the funny guy, the most outrageous guy, and the tragic character. But Ewart, we'll get to him in a sec. But they're not really introduced for a little while, Carl and Gally.
Yeah.
What we get first is a horrible section with Billy and Terry where they hook up with this guy Doyle, one of the many infamous Doyles that are mentioned in Irvine Welsh books. Obviously, this is one of the guys, one of the family from the story. Oh, what was it called? In the Acid House.
Oh,
Yeah, you know where your man is hooked up with the pregnant sister.
Yeah.
What was that bloody story called? A Soft Touch.
That's it.
So this is Dozo Doyle. I think Alec was the brother who was in.
There's about 400 Doyles in all his
books. There
definitely
is. They're infamous.
They're all the same.
They're mentioned in Porno. There's definitely a Doyle in the Trainspotting 2 film. But anyway, they hook up with him and another massive bloke called Martin Gentleman, who sounds pretty scary, but he seems to be easygoing enough, maybe influenced by Doyle.
But a psychopath as well.
He's psycho, and once you assign him a job, he's in like Flynn. But they basically rob copper from a factory. They're in cahoots with the security guard. They tie him up.
Yeah.
Give him a few slaps as well to make it look good. But then there's more basically abuse of animals. There's the fucking prolonged horrific attack on a couple of dogs here, guard dogs. They break their backs, I think, they fucking maimed them. And then there's just a horrible bit after they've robbed the copper, they're home and dry, but they still have the dogs tied up in the back and they just go to a beach. Ironically enough, probably not too far away from where Roy Strang brought that poor fucking animal out onto the island and basically tie it up and fucking burn it alive on a beach, which is just horrific. I've written down here, did this shit really go on so regularly where Welsh grew up? I mean, you hear stories, you know, not too local to us, but you'd read about it in Ireland of people abusing animals, but this seemed to go on an awful lot.
In fairness, he writes about it too much.
Well, I have to say, I hope this is the last time he does write about it, because later on in the book, there's a character mentioned who's drinking with Juice Terry, and he's just become a vet. And somebody asks him why, and he kind of mentions, I felt bad about being abusive to animals in my younger years and wanted to kind of give back. So this is a man that has a complete turnaround, kind of like a reformed drug addict who's now a counsellor kind of thing.
But that's always a sign of a fucking psychopath or serial killer, where he abusing animals.
Yes, absolutely. He seems to
start off there and then work their way up.
All right. The one thing I noticed in this horrible section was Terry is obviously, you know, trying to be all jovial with Doyle and Gentleman. Like he even mentions here, you can't have a barbecue on a beach without some hot dogs, you know, but he looks away when the dog actually starts burning and making horrible noises. So he's trying to save face and, you know, in front of these guys, but underneath he's secretly disgusted by it, but not enough to fucking stop it. I think one guy actually does try and stop it, or at least speaks up. He's another Doyle, a cousin of your man Dozo, and he gets a headbutt for his trouble. But yeah, it's a horrible section. I had forgotten about this the first time I read it, and I'm looking forward to forgetting it again.
Yeah, it wasn't a great start to the book, though.
Yeah, it's a bit weird, but you know, you certainly get that Terry is a larger than life character. I kind of started to see a lot of likenesses to Begbie in a weird way, in just the fact that he's the most loud, larger than life character of the group. He kind of demands attention from the group. He loves
attention.
He dictates a lot of what the group does, but he does it not through violence, he does it through sex. You know, he manipulates girls, obviously. He kind of brags an awful lot about his sexual conquests, where Begbie would have bragged about, you know, people beating up and that. Like Renton said, you know, Begbie doesn't do drugs, he just does people. I think Terry does people as well, just in a different way. He fucks them, he doesn't beat them up.
And he fucks them up.
We're introduced then to Gally and Carl. So they're slightly younger than the other two. A little bit more innocent, but still obviously involved in this. Like, they wouldn't have been invited to take part in that robbery, for example, for fear that they'd fuck it up or whatever. But they are still involved in kind of violence on the streets. They're involved in the hooliganism that goes on at the football matches. So Gally's got a knife in his room here when we meet him. So it's weird. He's got, you know, he's just a young fella. He's got band posters on his wall, football posters on his wall, but he's like hiding a knife under his pillow and getting it out.
He seemed the most normal of them all.
He did at the start, absolutely, yeah. And we get a good kind of point of view from him when they go to this football match. You know, it's weird to have this violence that just kind of becomes part of these lads' lives, just like the drugs, like the music, like the sport, and it's just accepted as a form of entertainment, which is the scary thing about it. But then
there wasn't much to do in the 80s, in fairness.
Well, sport, drugs and music and sex seems enough to me.
There was no sex in the 80s. What are you on about?
Hey, there's sex in this book.
Should have come to fucking Ireland.
Catholic Ireland was a different fucking shake. But I suppose the trick for normal people is to, you know, get involved in this violence but not let it take over your life, which it obviously does with people like Begbie and probably around Doyle. But there's still an expectation to man up at times, whether it be swedging at matches or chibbing a lad at school seems to be popular enough as well. And both Gally and Renton in Trainspotting both did this, which is kind of surprising certainly for Renton, and it is for Gally at this stage in his life as well. The section where they go to the match is pretty funny. So they were supposed to disguise themselves in Rangers gear so they could blend in. Yeah,
they were making their own little crew. It was just at the start of casual, sort of.
Yeah. So it
was the beginning of the Hibs casuals.
You obviously have guys like Doyle and Begbie who are leading the charge, and the rest are just following suit. But as I say, it's kind of scary seeing lads who aren't that bothered with swedging, but they're just, affected by people that have a genuine affection for it. I mentioned it more in Connecting Lines, but obviously there's some familiar faces in this chapter as well. There's a lot of references as well to the kind of dividing loyalties in terms of football teams within families even. I didn't think that was as much a thing in Scotland.
No.
I mean, I know, obviously down in Liverpool you have families who are both Everton and Liverpool fans, same in Manchester, but it's a bit more light-hearted than up north, I would have thought.
It's more a religious thing.
Exactly. And it's weird. I mean, we have Carl, who's the Hearts fan. We've mentioned his dad, who we think is a Kilmarnock fan. But it just seems weird that you wouldn't be fucking annihilated if you're a Hearts fan amongst all these lads, but he seems to get away with it.
Yeah.
But it is funny.
They all hate Rangers anyway, and Celtic.
Big time, yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah. It's funny, they're concealing weapons as they're going in. Spud is there and he has frozen peas and fish fingers. He's after robbing from a shop.
Do some damage with them, in fairness.
Absolutely. Well, you probably need something to kind of nurse your wounds after you've been beaten to a pulp. Himself and Spud sneak off though before they even go in, which is kind of goes part and parcel with those two sneaky fuckers, in fairness. It makes sense for their characters to kind of go, fuck this.
Too much hassle.
Yeah, too much hassle. And I mean, Renton was never, he goes on an awful lot, both in the book and in the film, about hating violence, really. So that makes sense for him. And obviously Spud would follow suit as well if he can get away with it. But there's a funny segment where they all go into the Rangers section. Gally does mention that it's frightening, but not as frightening as if he refused, and then he'd have to face Doyle and
you get a proper kick in there.
Yeah, at the school gates on Monday morning. So I think Begbie and Juice Terry get dragged out of the crowd. So again, Juice Terry, very easygoing bloke, but got fully involved because he was surrounded by these...
Oh, he was just fucking dragged along. He wasn't even meant to be going, I don't think.
Yeah, but I think he did give someone a few
slaps.
No,
he started fighting it wasn't by accident though, or something. Some lad pushed it into him and he just started punching the head off him.
Yeah, but again, I think there's always the case with him to kind of save face and make a good impression with these other fuckers like Begbie and Doyle. So yeah, he just goes full on in and he ends up getting in the paper and everything because
front
of this.
page.
But it's a funny section, in fairness, and there's a great bit which I definitely think I have in favourite writing involving George Best, so we'll keep that for then. But just carrying on with I think it's actually late 1979 that happened. I know I looked up the match in question where I think they said George Best scored a hat-trick. I did look it up and it was still the 70s, not the early 80s here. But it leads to a nightclub scene then. I say nightclub was probably basically a barn dance that these lads were at.
It was a teenage disco.
It's basically a teenage disco, yeah. But more familiar faces, Sick Boys in there. Him and Juice Terry kind of hook up as kindred spirits because they're the two big fanny merchants, inverted commas, in their respective groups. And that friendship carries on into a couple of books actually. But Gally as well, we're still seeing it from his point of view, and he's having no luck on the dance floor.
Lady front now.
Yeah. And he gets a bit frustrated about this and goes outside, sees Juice Terry and Sick Boy kind of rubbing it in again, and then gets involved in a row. He has this knife on him, but he doesn't actually use it. But this sly fucker, Polmont, that's obviously his nickname because he spent a stretch inside. This dirty bastard takes the knife off Gally, slashes your man's face with it, and then hands it back to Gally, basically leaves him with the smoking gun. And Gally gets the blame for it.
He legs it then.
He legs it, of course, yeah. But even on the days that follow, the other lads, like the other lads in his group, even think he did it,
Yeah.
And this is another one of the themes that crops up a lot in the book, is that, you don't rat on people, your mates, or anyone. You don't rat on anyone at all.
But sure, he wasn't even his mate. That was a ridiculous thing.
No, but he still didn't want to. I mean, I suppose this guy Polmont was involved with Doyle as well, but I don't even think it was the fear of ratting him out. It was just this unwritten code. I think it comes up later in the book that Carl Hewitt's dad mentions his kind of rules of life, and one of them is that
in fairness, if he had a rat on him, his life might have been a lot better.
Yes, in some ways, but he also could have been knifed himself by Doyle or Polmont down the road. But yeah, it seemed to have a serious knock-on effect to his life, because he does get the blame for it. He's dragged in, and it's a
Get
pretty...
stung for it, yeah.
You get stung, you get sent down, and this is a young lad. It doesn't... If Juice Terry is 16, then I think Gally is only 14 or something, which is pretty tragic at that age to get framed for something like this. But yeah, as we say, that's kind of the start of the downward spiral.
Yeah, he said he was never the same after that.
No. There's another funny little bit where the other lads do go to school after the Easter Road antics, and your man Martin Gentleman, obviously because of his sheer size, was spotted straight away on the news or in the paper and just gets expelled from school straight away and is walking out telling the teachers to fuck off. And I did like Gally's line where he says, a gentleman but not a scholar. But we move on. There's a couple of scenes as well with the teacher, and I think it's a Mr. Black in the school, kind of chasing him around a school desk. He comes up again in a later book, actually. I'll mention him later. But that's kind of the end of their rites of passage. The end of the innocence, as Enigma once sang. I think it was Return to Innocence.
The age of innocence, return to innocence.
Yeah, well, we're not returned to innocence. It's gone, all right?
There's no chance of ever return to innocence.
It's finished. But we move on to the early 90s then. Obviously, they're a little bit older. They're in their 20s. Carl himself, he's now known as the Milky Bar Kid. That was because of his hair, wasn't
it?
Yeah. He's trying to, get a few notches on his bedpost. He's hooked up with a girl called Sabrina. There's kind of a funny section here where he's gotten his parents out of the house for the night, or at least they've gone out for the night, and he's shipped this girl in, and she does agree to have sex with him kind of straight away, which he's like, oh yes, result. But then he's also kind of wondering then, if she's so eager to do it, she must have done this several times before. And that actually reminded me again of a section in Trainspotting where Renton has the same horrible assumptions about that girl Diane just because she had condoms on her. It's like, well, why would a girl have condoms on her? She must be the wrong type of girl that my mother warned me about, So it's a kind of pretty horrible assumption to make about anyone. But he does have sex for it. There's funny bits where he's relying on foreplay tips that he got off Terry. So this is a
better man.
This is a man who looked up porn films for chat up lines. So good stuff. After the deed, it's clearly that girl Sabrina's first time, and he sees blood on the sheets and thinks it was because his cock was too big. But there's also a tragic bit where his immediate reaction is that he's going to rub it in Gally's face, but of course Gally is in prison, or wherever, Borstal, so he can't do that. But straight away you see where there's a fork in the road in terms of the friendship, and what happens to these guys. Obviously, everything's going rosy for Carl at this point, and not so much for Gally. Terry himself as well. Terry's his mother is at his wit's end with him, with his lifestyle. You can really see the effect of the absent father on Terry's kind of attitude to life.
And he's a bollocks.
Yeah, and he kind of rules the house. And, his mother has a stepdad there, or a boyfriend, whatever, but he wants nothing to do with Terry.
He's German, isn't he?
Yeah, and there's some funny exchanges around the breakfast table as well. Actually, hang on, I just want to read. I have it here, 161. Oh yeah, so yeah, you're right, Jerm. Mr. Ulrich goes, I also like a drink, but this is excessive drinking all the time that I can't understand. It's obviously German with a bit of Scottish as well. I just drink to forget, says Terry, smirking as he says it. Terry's ma just backs out with some rolls on a plate. She says, don't be so bloody stupid, Terry. What do you mean to forget? What the hell do you have to forget? Fuck knows. Can you remember? Must be working. You beauty. But there's just countless ones. I've a lot in favourite writing. I've a whole kind of Terry section just for favourite writing. But it progresses on obviously in the 90s with Terry just being Terry, and Carl kind of progressing obviously with his DJing as well.
No disc jockey.
That's it. Mr. Billy Barrell.
There's fuck all about him in it, really, isn't he? He's
definitely
pretty much a peripheral.
Yeah, but he disappears towards the end of it totally. But there is a section here where he's just getting into the boxing. As you say, he's kind of left the soccer behind. He's concentrating on the boxing. I do like his account of going to see Barry McGuigan and your man Petrosa in 85. Obviously, most people in Ireland would remember that anyway. So that was a good little section. And he's doing all right for himself as well. He's going out with a model. He's got a trainer. Things are starting to go place for him, but he gets introduced to a local businessman, inverted commas, called Gilfellin, who is also involved with another guy, Tyrone Power. And I think Tyrone Power is definitely mentioned in a later book. I don't know if it's porno. He's definitely mentioned anyway, but these are a couple of local heavies, and they actually end up helping Billy and the crew against...
Your man, that wasn't the name of the big man, was it?
No, I don't think the big man ever got a name.
Did he not?
No, and plus he wasn't in the fucking book. That legend was just made up for the big screen.
I know, but was it not something like that? Either fucking...
In the story?
In the film, like...
I didn't think he had a name. He was literally just called the big man.
The big man. Alright.
Oh my God, was he big. And he was a man. But no, there's another row here. First of all, Gally's situation has gotten worse. He's involved in the casuals now big time with Billy's younger brother, Rab, actually, at the start. He's probably a bit too young, or a bit too old in the tooth now for being involved in them. But, he's kind of almost regressed a bit.
Nothing else to do.
Yeah, based on his time inside. And when he did get out, he hooked up with Gail, the girl from the start of the film who had been with Terry. And Gail's... she's a bit of a bitch, I think.
Just a little bit, yeah.
I mean, we don't get her side of things, but...
by all accounts, she's a cunt.
She seems to be just cheating on him left, right and centre. She also gets involved with this snaky bastard, Polmont, both behind Gally's back at the start and obviously blatantly just going out with him then after she kicks Gally to the curb. But there is a section where Gally mentions that he had a fight with her, and I think now this is obviously wrong on his part completely, but he went to draw a slap on her or push her or something. He ended up elbowing his daughter in the face, which is pretty horrible. And obviously he's paying the price for that, both guilt-wise and obviously reputation in the area as well. But this brought on a kind of a full-scale war with Doyle and Polmont and that gang. But Doyle cut Billy at one stage with a knife on his chin. And this caused Billy's next fight to be postponed. So your man Gilfellin and Tyrone, you're just going to call him the big one from now on. And Tyrone Power got involved then and kind of warned Doyle off them. But there is at least one other altercation later in the book involving those fuckers. But you can kind of see where, things are starting to go from bad to worse for Gally, and things are
spiraling out of control.
Yeah, in comparison to the other three, really. Obviously, things aren't changing really for Terry. He's just carrying on as normal, but he seems quite happy with it. I did like a little bit where Gally passes by some graffiti on the wall, which is talking about him. It's probably something to do with him fucking slashing your man's face years ago. But it mentions him by name, and he wishes that he had a more obscure nickname because his mother knew straight away who that was. And when I read that reminded me of a time many, many years ago when I was living in Darndale, and I wrote a derogatory comment about my sister on the wall around the corner. I said, her name's Debbie, but I said, Deddy is a pig. D-D-D-I-E is a pig, and it didn't take Inspector Clouseau to work out who had done that. But yeah,
I hope you were severely reprimanded for that.
Oh God, I must have been. Yeah, probably got one of my Star Wars toys taken off me for the night or something. There's another section which it leads to kind of the tragedy of Gally's life, but it is quite funny as well, where he actually goes around to none other than Larry's house.
Good old Larry.
Good old Larry from the acid house. And he's looking to get ecstasy off him, but all Larry has, shocker, is heroin.
Off you go.
And Gally can't really handle this shit at all. It's not his drug, but he does get hooked into it, of course. Larry mentions out Katrina Doyle as well at one point.
A smashing broad. And
there's also a memorable character, one of Larry's mates, called Fat Phil. And Larry actually stabs Fat Phil over a minor dispute. And it
wouldn't be like Larry, that.
And I think they mentioned that Phil was probably going to be okay, but he also started taking heroin, and then he bled so much that they had to bring him to A&E. And it was a funny bit where they're bringing him in the taxi, and then obviously they drop him off at the door, very much like renting and train spotting. And obviously, you couldn't be going into the hospital and having to explain yourself. But Larry as well, good old the charming gentleman that he is. He also mentions at one point that he likes giving big-mouthed lassies lots of jellies so that he can take Polaroids of them naked and teach them a lesson. So Larry hasn't changed since we last met him in the acid house.
I don't think a man like that's ever going to change.
No, definitely not.
Very principled man.
Big time. Terry as well, we mentioned that he hasn't really had a proper job since he was on the lorry, so he has a few trips to the DHSS. They're trying to get him to get full-time jobs. He does take a job in a burger joint, but he dislikes that so much that he burns the place to the ground.
He done that with a couple of places, didn't he?
So he doesn't have to go back and work there.
Yeah, anywhere he gets a job, he burns it down.
And somebody behind the counter in the DHSS actually implied that he was the arsonist, and he ended up getting an apology letter from them because of
it. And they left him alone then for a while.
Yeah.
But like at all his interviews for the job, he just kept mentioning juice slurries.
Yeah, he's always saying, "Are you sure there's nothing
juice slurry related that I'll be getting involved in?"
He finds it very hard to accept that the arse fell out of that business.
I can't believe it. I can't believe it was a business, number one.
Sounds brilliant, in fairness. Obviously, this is before the days of proper convenience stores where you had everything under one roof.
But all they sold was drinks.
Yeah, that's very handy. Sure, there's a
what if you're hungry?
You go somewhere else. You wait for the chipper van.
Another van.
Or the ice cream van. You don't question why the ice cream van only has ice cream.
Well, they have crisps as well.
Yeah, but they do
and
now.
Popcorn.
They didn't back then.
They fucking did.
They have that's who Drew Terry should be getting onto the fucking ice cream men.
Bastards.
Should be blowing them bastards up.
Wasn't there ice cream wars in Glasgow where they were stabbing each other and killing each other? Years ago.
Over ice cream vans?
Yeah.
I'd say that still goes on, yeah. Like that clip I sent you, the Peter Kay.
Fucking deadly.
The ice cream man cometh. Where are we?
In your kitchen.
We are indeed. Yeah, there's a good bit here where Terry is he's been shagging your one Gail on the slide.
He's been shagging everyone.
Yeah, but he sets up a date with her. But he still can't figure out why Gally would go ahead and actually marry her, because in his own words, she was riding everyone in the scheme. But as he says, in Gally's case, beggars can't be choosers. or as Irvine Welsh puts it here, it's easier to criticise the Mars bar supper from Hampstead than it is from Ethiopia.
True.
He's a man with words. There's a funny bit as well when he does go around to your one Gail's house. It's not a romantic candlelit dinner by any means. They get straight down to the shagging.
The nitty gritty. He
bends her over the kitchen table and he says in his own words, "I surprise her and myself by choosing the fanny." So once again, buggery rears its ugly head in an Irvine Welsh book. He does eventually bring her out for a drink though, but he actually, at this point, he's so sick of her, he knows what an arsehole she is as well. And when she goes to the Jacks, he just does a legger, chuckling to himself as he heads out the door. We get more of Carl then. So Carl is known as Ensign in the DJ world. I do remember that it was Terry that gave him this name somehow, but I don't remember how.
The Nazi sign. He got caught doing the Nazi sign.
It was so stupid of me.
So stupid.
Yeah, because he gets done. There's actually a girl attacks him, starts throwing beer at him in the
discotheque.
In the discotheque, because he was just doing like the John Cleese Nazi funny walk. Yeah,
and exactly. They got caught. They blew it up. It was caught on camera, I think.
Yeah. But he did actually keep this as his DJ name, which is funny. But it's good when you see Terry is kind of a fish out of water in these clubs as well. He goes on about how the loud music stops him from plying his trade, from chatting up women. But he still ends up, he ends up with the girl who was throwing beer at Ensign, because come on love, he's not worth it. Takes her out of there, ends up having ecstasy with her and shagging her, and possibly one of her mates as well, I think. But the book is just made up of these little stories involving these lads kind of going off on their own and having little adventures, which is very much, as we say, reminiscent of Trainspotting, certainly. And you can see where Welch probably either first-hand experienced something like this or just had the idea.
Heard the
story.
Urban legends. And
just kind of has them as almost little short stories, and then just throws them all together in the form of, a long book in this way. Book kind of combines it all by having the friends all, the guys all know each other. Munich. We get the Munich section next. This
Good
went,
old trip.
I thought this went on fairly long, I have to say. There is some funny moments. There's some funny bits at the start where they're in the hostel and they're kind of getting on each other's nerves. They all want to do their own thing.
They
Obviously,
sort of... Why did they go to Munich? I can't remember. There was some reason for it.
I don't think it was like, it wasn't anyone's stag or anything.
No,
like that. I think it was
some...
just a trip that they'd planned for a long time.
Yeah, they drifted away from each other. Like they weren't hanging around with each other.
But Terry is definitely pushing for this trip.
Yeah. There was I can't remember the fucking reason. There was some reason for it.
But how Gally even ended up going on this. And once he gets there, all he wants to do is drink cans in this hostel because he probably doesn't have much money to do anything else. Billy definitely didn't want to go because he was in training for a boxing match. And Carl, was just going with the flow. But once he was over there, all he wanted to do was go to kind of record stores and obviously check out kind of that's probably the reason he went, really, was to check out the more decent clubs, that Munich had to offer. Whereas Terry just was happy going to...
Get his hoe.
Yeah, they wanted to go to Oktoberfest, didn't they?
Yeah.
They do end up at a festival anyway.
It's October, they're getting a rare one.
Yeah. But at the hostel, Terry was shiting in a B-day and blocked it. And there was pissy water flooding into the apartment downstairs where these Turks were staying. So they had to get out of there. Luckily, they met up with this guy, Wolfgang, and ended up back in his apartment.
Sure, how wouldn't you?
I don't think his girlfriend was too impressed once she realised that they were staying for a while. And there's a funny bit where there's lots of toilet humour in this section. So Carl goes into a room in the dark, thinks he's in a bathroom, but pisses into Billy's sports bag. Or did he shite in it? No, he pisses in it.
No, just pisses in it.
Yeah, but he blames it on the cat that was going around the apartment. And then Terry himself just pisses himself and gets into Carl's bed and is pretty much spooning Carl covered in piss. So Carl gets out of his bed, gets into Terry's bed, not realising that that's where the piss started.
It's the originating of the piss.
But there's mentions at this section, I noted, that not everyone who supports Hibs is Catholic and vice versa with Hearts.
Yeah.
Which again is kind of weird. It's obviously a lot more clear cut in Glasgow, I would imagine. I don't know. But it just seems strange. It was news to me that, you got lads, I would have thought it was a given that if you're a Catholic, you're Hibs and, the other crowd, Hearts. But Terry as well is a big fan of Graham Souness, who we know has been mentioned before in Irvine Welsh books.
A lot.
He even grew a bit of bum fluff on his lip to copy him at one stage. I think it's mentioned that Terry's dad is of African descent.
Is it?
Yeah. So that's where he gets the curly hair from, I believe. Okay. Yeah, there's that second. Like as I say, it goes on a bit in Germany. They get
the thing about going back to the house was a bit far fetched.
Yeah, that went on a lot.
Like a lot of these stories are relatable because you could see it happen to lads anywhere.
Of course,
but this thing where they're basically kicked out with their fucking pay and they're absolute. You can spot a scumbag a mile away. There's 4 scumbags with filthy, stinking. The next thing they meet up with this lad and he brings him back to his mansion. Just I go away with it.
Well, and the funny bit about that was Carl and Gally, I think, that talked your man into it. Terry didn't arrive till afterwards.
Yeah, they didn't. No, Terry wasn't with them. He went off in the sulk.
But that goes on for a fair bit. There is a small section where they're at the actual beer festival and Carl gets lucky. I think Terry is doing all right for himself, but Billy gets involved in a row and actually bursts his knuckles then.
Carl was trying to ride someone outside it and couldn't get it up, wasn't it?
Yeah, when they all kind of could see it. And Gally is just in bits at this stage, destroying himself with vomit.
We find out why Gally's not in good form in this trip.
Yeah, well, of course, when they get back to the party in this apartment, he has to be talked down from the roof pretty much, which is obviously foreshadowing for what happens, but it scares the life out of everyone, including Terry at that stage.
Well, yeah, we found out he had AIDS, though, didn't we?
Yeah, he mentioned, this is afterwards, I think, in the come down, he does actually tell Carl that he has AIDS at that point, and I think it's mentioned in the section involving Larry that the girl who was there, she had it as well, and they kind of both didn't even have to say it to each other, they just kind of knew. It was almost like they were vampires. They were like, I know what you are and you know what I am, kind of thing. But I suppose the one good thing from Carl's point of view is that he gets a gig out of it from one of these promoters in Munich. But, other than that, it's been a bit of a disaster. Obviously, well, Terry did all right, as Terry always does, but Billy's fucked up his hand, so his next fight is off again, and that kind of dies a death then, I believe. We move forward again to the next section, the last section, which is the year 2000 approximately. And Billy just kind of disappears here for a long section. We just know that his career ended prematurely.
Yeah.
I think they said he has a thyroid problem, and his last fight was just a disaster. You know, it looked like he'd beat your man easily, and it just went fucking...
Didn't explain. I think we find out later, but...
Yeah, I think it mentioned at one point that he thought the guy that he was fighting reminded him of Gally, which put him off. But obviously, if he has medical issues as well, that's not going to help. Carl is in Australia for the last section, or most of it, in bits.
Absolute flitters.
So we kind of see two sides of the coin here, where two guys were pretty successful with their careers. One had it cut short, through no fault of his own, really. The other guy is kind of fucking it up for himself by just taking copious amounts of drugs. It mentions that he had a Top of the Pops appearance.
Yeah,
he could have had a decent record deal.
Oh, he was raking it in.
But chose to go the kind of dodgy rave route and just take these obscure gigs in the middle of nowhere for these weird festivals, and is obviously taking shitloads of drugs. And there's a lot of sections which goes back to early Welsh with these kind of almost stream of consciousness paragraphs where you just don't know what.
He's just waffling on.
He's big time waffling.
Just fucking, you're off your fucking head. That's it. There's no meaning to it.
There's no meaning to it, but sometimes it's interesting to read if it's put in a.
I know, but he's trying to make out that there's some purposes and people are all. There's a reason why they're doing it. They're not. They're just getting off their fucking heads.
Well, yeah, and obviously it ties in when he gets the news from back home that his dad is fucked. He's on the way out. It mentions Gally's father actually briefly here, where he's turned over a new leaf, obviously after spending a long stretch in prison, and is now working as a security guard, or as he says, a rare case of a poacher turned gamekeeper. But we go back to Carl. It goes back and forward between Carl's sections in Australia.
Yeah.
Just these prolonged paragraphs or pages of him just in bits. And then his girlfriend trying to revive him, tell him the
Ray
news.
Parler's there as well.
Ray Parler, of course, yeah. Fucking brilliant. I knew you'd remember that section anyway. Terry, again, hasn't really changed.
He's got worse. He's not even getting as many women now.
He's not getting as many women, and this is where he's starting to realise that people around him are getting a lot younger.
And they're laughing at him. He's a big fucking fat fucking mess.
It's life is starting to catch up with him, and even he eventually gets the message about that, and as I say, he kind of notices these metrosexuals and considers the idea of sprucing himself up a bit. But it is quite good in that, there's people in real life who kind of socialise with people a lot younger than them.
There certainly is.
And, which is grand. But, there's people around you in the pub, their age changes in terms of they always stay young, but you don't, you're getting older. And before you know it, you're one of these barflies that, young lads are fucking either laughing at or just kind of, you become a caricature of yourself almost. But yeah, it's weird. There's a funny bit where he's just lying in his bed. He's got a mini fridge up in the room.
The mother, was this when the mother left him?
So he actually rings downstairs to tell her to bring him up more beer to fill up the mini fridge, which she does, and then just goes back down, packs a suitcase and leaves.
Never sees her own
and actually leaves him a note to say he can have the house and all. She'd rather just cut her losses and get the fuck away from him.
That's how bad he was.
Even the German lad is gone, Mr. Ulrich.
Oh, he was fucking horrendous. Like, he was horrendous at the end. James Terry. Yeah. He wasn't funny, he was just bad.
Jesus, he carries on for a while after this, let me tell you. But he's actually hanging around with Billy's younger brother, Rab.
Yeah, that's what I mean. He's not around. Everyone else grows up and he didn't.
Now, Rab himself is a changed man. He was mentioned earlier in the book as one of the casuals who was with Gally. But he's a reformed character now. He's in college. And we meet him first. He's in a fringe club for a film viewing as part of the Edinburgh Festival. And he meets, of all people, El Lexo, who is also a reformed man and is working as a technical advisor for a production crew who are working on a documentary about the casuals. So it also mentions here...
with Danny Dyer, clearly.
It could indeed. But it also mentions that Lexo backed up Gally and the lads in the row with Doyle and co. And that kind of made me wonder even more how exaggerated the stuff with Roy Strang was in Marby's Dark Nightmares. Was it literally all him? You know the way he was, as you said, he was always blaming it on Lexo.
Yeah.
But was it literally always
Just him?
He was the gang leader. He was the bad influence.
Could have been, yeah.
And Lexo wasn't actually that bad at all. I don't know. I mean, the last time we seen Lexo, we seen a physical embodiment of him in the film.
God.
And it wasn't good at all. It was a missed opportunity. So, look, who knows? I'm pretty sure Lexo's mentioned in The Blade Artist.
Most psychos will be.
He's certainly in porno anyway. I'm trying to remember by The Blade Artist who Begbie has killed. But yeah, as you say, Terry's just a tragic figure at this point.
Yeah, he's bad.
And then out of nowhere...
He's a horrible cunt, but then just classic comes up.
Out of nowhere, we just get a few new characters, one of which is an American pop star called Catherine Joyner. We first meet her, she's staying in the Balmoral Hotel with her manager Franklin, and it's revealed that she's anorexic, that she's having a lot of problems with her career. Her last record totally tanked and got bad reviews. Her gigs.
She was a massive star, basically.
Yeah.
10, 15 years previously.
Exactly, yeah, and it's just not going as well now. And that coincides with post Alec getting Terry a legit job cleaning windows of this hotel. Just the thoughts of these two complete fucking shite bags, ditchos, stuck up on one of those high-rise scaffolding things, washing windows.
You didn't go through where the bit where fucking Juice Terry was robbing the house. And your man shites in it and everything.
I can't believe we missed that. Why haven't I got that down? That's a fucking use. I have to have that in favourite writing. That's in my favourite bits, to be honest with you. Yeah, we'll get to that. That's definitely in my favourite bits.
Okay.
But yeah, this is quite funny in that they're outside cleaning the windows, and Alec for once is trying to concentrate and get the job done, but Terry's fucking dying and is hungry and spots your one
massive sandwich,
uneaten club sandwich. So just slides the window open and hops in and ends up just talking to her. Then kind of recognises her, or at least I think she has to tell him who she is, but he kind of talks her around, and this is just so unreal and different to this woman's way of life that she finds him kind of endearing, even though she can't really understand what he's saying. But he talks her into going for a drink anyway. And,
she's paying.
Oh, she's paying for everything, yeah.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is that for this week anyway. Yes, such is the size of the novel Glue that we've cut it into 2 parts. So that's it for week 1, and please join us next week for part 2 of Glue. Until then, thanks for listening. Bye bye.